The Advocates Coalition on Development and Environment, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Health, Education, and the Ministry of Local Government, including civil society budget advocacy group, are bringing to you a high-level national policy dialogue that shall be taking center stage at Katonga Hall, 8:30 a.m. all the way to 12:30 p.m. That is tomorrow, Thursday. And they intend to discuss, yes, the budget month. Yes, to popularize the budget month, which aims at providing awareness about the budget and participation of the citizens in the budgetary process of this country. They also intend to talk about some of the alternative policy options that could be expedited by this government to resuscitate the country's economic recovery. Yes, because it has been battered by the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. Over 600,000 jobs were lost during the onset of the pandemic when we instituted a raft of measures to ward off the spread of the COVID-19 disease. Close to 1 million, 600,000 people lost their jobs. 3.3 million people fell into poverty. Arthur Bainomgisha is here to talk about this dialogue and why it has chosen this opportune moment to be held. That is Thursday, tomorrow. Arthur, very good morning.
Good morning to you.
First of all, why is this dialogue being executed right now instead of, say, during the budget process?
Thank you very much, my brother. I think, as you may know, Accord has a partnership with the Ministry of Finance, CS-BAG and ODI to promote budget transparency and budget participation. In other words, to make the budget very participatory, because a budget is supposed to be owned by the citizens of Uganda. It is supposed to be a bottom-up approach, the whole process of making the budget. People must understand it for them to take use of this budget.
But that's what that isn't what we've been seeing, Arthur Bainomgisha, from the top, from the bottom to up. It's been from the top to bottom.
Actually, this initiative has been going on. There are efforts that have been on for some time now to make sure that it is very participatory.
Right.
It's very inclusive because it's supposed to be a people's budget.
All right.
And so the timing of this budget, this is actually an annual event. We always organize this high-level budget dialogue with the Ministry of Finance, CS-BAG, and our partners. And this time around, of course, you know, the COVID pandemic has also affected the situation. So, but anyway, still we have this high-level budget dialogue tomorrow. And one of the key objectives, of course, is to popularize this budget. But secondly, to try to bring on forth alternative policy ideas that could reignite the economy that has been battered by COVID-19. Because as you rightly said, over 6,000 jobs lost, over 3 million people sliding back into poverty. We must bring this back. Of course, the economy is projected to grow at 5%, but a country like ours, a growth of 5% is very, very, very small. It must be a double-digit growth for us to realize the benefits of that growth. So we need...
And this is coming in 2022, so the 5% growth.
Yes. So it is too small because you see growth sometimes without jobs being created. And so this presents an opportunity for different stakeholders to generate policy ideas to contribute to reigniting this economy so that we can actually drive the economy to a double-digit growth, create jobs again, put people back to work. And as you know, especially the education sector.
And also increasing the national gender and equity compliance.
Compliance. You know, if you go to the education, most schools have been sold. Most teachers have lost jobs. Some have committed suicide. I didn't know there's a neighboring school here in Nigeria, the headmaster committed suicide. So creation of jobs is going to be important, but also operationalization of the cities. Implementation of the parish model.
Debt sustainability.
Yeah, debt sustainability. All those are key issues that
65 trillion shillings in debt.
In debt. So those are issues that will not need small minds to think for this country. So this opportunity, and of course we are working with NTV. The NTV will take this debate and dialogue to the sitting rooms, to the boardrooms of many people.
We've already been doing it. We shall just maximize on that same
so that actually people can generate these ideas and build themselves, because this country belongs to all of us. So this dialogue is intended to bring, to create an opportunity for every Ugandan to generate these ideas, but also to mobilize our people to work hard. Because when you have a crisis like this one, the way we can come out of this crisis is to mobilize every able-bodied Ugandan to make a contribution towards development, and then we can actually rebuild ourselves. So that's one of the things. But also, of course, to promote budget transparency.
Indeed.
Because we see, we still, as a country, still suffer from corruption and pandemic. Corruption is still a pandemic. And so what we try to do is, if we make the budget open and transparent, then the citizens can hold the technical people, the government accountable about this budget. They would know that this money was earmarked for us.
During this high-level meeting, you also plan to shed a light on the other issue, which is the emergency response on COVID-19, accountability on the emergency response.
Exactly. Of course, you know that there has been some outcry that some of the money could have been misused. This kind of emergencies will continue to come. So how do we put in place a mechanism that the resources that are earmarked for responding to an emergency like Ebola, like COVID-19, will never be mismanaged? And of course, we are not out of woods. You see the Indian variant is here and several variants, and many pandemics will come. So we think that this, we will also be able to discuss how do we respond to emergencies? How do we manage the money? Because you see, the challenge with emergencies is if you just react to emergencies. But if we plan for emergencies, when they come, the damage actually is minimized.
Speaking of planning, does our planning as a country actually align with our budgetary process, or does the national budget just land us right? Because I'm looking at NDP 3, it was approved by Cabinet in 2019, at the end of 2019. Then you have the budget, its framework coming in 2020 in January. Does our budgetary process or planning as a country align with our budgetary process?
No, actually, this budget is aligned with NDP 3. And actually, there has been a change because while the planning and budgeting has been sector planning, sector budgeting, this is now program-based budgeting, and that is enshrined in the NDP 3. So for the first time, I think now we see that shift, but also that working together and following the National Development Plan. And I think we have discussed here.
But we've also seen a shortfall in the revenues coming in from government at a time when we needed more money to be injected to help businesses be resuscitated, to help citizens resuscitate themselves. Don't you think this is a big problem? Even if we are focusing on the programs, we've cut money for these programs that needed more money, yes, because there was already a shortfall from government.
You are spot on. And I think one of the objectives of this dialogue tomorrow is to be able to generate those ideas and convince policymakers that these are programs where you need to concentrate the scarce resources. Because the world economy has been battered by COVID-19. But we have resources coming in. We have generated, yes, I think the projection is about 21 trillion shillings locally generated, and then of course we'll have other funds from external sources. Yes, a small scarce resources. Which program areas do you invest these scarce resources that can make quick returns? For example, I should say here that we still think that government should prioritize investing in climate change and natural resources program. So because that's where 80% of our population are. If you invest in that area, you will likely actually to get quick returns. But as of now, less money is going to that in that area. So tomorrow we'll make a case. We'll make a case that put money in environment and in climate change adaptation and resilience and sustainable development.
Also,
we'll also make a case we'll also make a case for government to invest in human capital development.
Indeed.
And human capital development, we are talking about education sector.
Indeed.
That has been battered. Because as right now, schools closed, schools sold, banks actually selling most of the schools, but also the health sector, where people, the pandemic actually is still continuing. We need to be able to build the population, because the greatest resource for any country is a healthy population. If the population are healthy, they are able actually to create wealth.
Indeed.
It's not the minerals, it's not the oil.
Yes.
It is the human, it is if you have a healthy population. So we want actually to also to make a case that government invest in human capital development.
Indeed.
And then the population can actually create wealth.
The good news, Arthur Bainomic, is that our gender and equity compliance has actually increased. From the financial year 2019-2020, it was at 68%.
Yes.
61 actually. It increased to 68% in 2020-21. Yes. Local government, it increased from 42% in 2019-2020 all the way to 58% 2020-2021. I would like to know what compounded this increase in our compliance when it comes to gender and equity.
First of all, you need to realize that the budget, first of all, our budget will not be passed if it doesn't get a gender certificate from the Equal Opportunities actually Commission. And there is a law that
what did we do right?
But also, I think government also realizes, first of all, this is a constitutional matter as well. It's a constitutional matter, but we also realize that actually women, because of course when we talk about gender, we are not talking about women. We are talking about the relationship between men and women. But we want to emphasize women. They are still the majority in terms of the numbers, but also the majority of them are in the productive sector, especially agriculture, which is the backbone of this country. I think, and that's why, of course, we need to credit government for investing in gender and equity, because by doing that, then you liberate a critical mass of the population to be productive and take a center stage. So I think government realizes that if you are going to make any progress, then gender and equity is going to be an area of investment.
Let's talk about the stimulus package that never made it to the SMEs that needed it the most. There was over 2.9 billion shillings that was earmarked to help businesses get resuscitated. None of these, many SMEs have received this money. What does that mean?
I think that's one of the anomalies. It is not too late because you know, when you are responding to an emergency, sometimes you can actually mistarget. But I think that's one of the anomalies, and now, but it's not lost. I think that's what this budget now should speak to. This budget now, and actually I want to speak about investing in climate change and natural resources, small scale and medium enterprises that are green, and therefore sustainable and inclusive. So I think time has come for government to start to look. Actually, most economies are not sustained by mega businesses, industries. They are sustained by small scale and medium enterprises, small businesses. And I think for recovery to really to take place, government must take the money to women's groups, to youth groups, so that you can put them back on their feet. They provide employment to the majority of the population, and actually this economy can come back. So I think moving forward, that anomaly must be corrected and put the money where it's supposed to be.
Let's talk about debt sustainability. Does this country have the ability to sustain its debt, which is now kept at 65 trillion shillings? Do we have the ability?
I think that question should be best put to the Minister of Finance.
Because they're now introducing a raft of measures for more tax proposals to ensure that they use more domestic resources to finance the 45.6 trillion budget. 21.6 trillion is coming from the local coffers. So that's why we're asking, do we have the ability to sustain our debt, even as we continue to borrow, even as we continue to tax more Ugandans who are grappling?
I think there is a need for discipline in terms of debt contraction, in terms of debt management and debt servicing. I think we have not been disciplined in terms of debt construction, because up to now we still have loans that actually are dormant and we are paying interest on them. I think that's that department in Ministry of Finance needs to be serious and must be ready. When you contract the debt, it must be put to use. But also that you must also be very careful that you don't contract any debt. And I think it's time now to be disciplined. We don't contract any debt. We should be careful not to contract debt, so that our children can actually become now slaves to the lenders. And also in the long run, it may not be sustainable, because if we are paying now 10 trillion out of 22 money that we raise, then actually we may not make progress. So I think we need debt discipline, so that actually this country is not trapped in a debt like the United States.
Arthur Bainomisha, the Executive Director, Advocates Coalition on Development and Environment, many thanks for speaking to NTV Uganda about this very high-level dialogue that is taking center stage tomorrow. Thank you. Of course, 8:30 a.m. all the way to 12:30 p.m. Do ensure that you watch that right there tomorrow at Katonga Hall, Serena Conference Center Hotel. Emmanuel Dombo, the NRM Communications Director, is already here. Sara Birete, the Executive Director, Constitution Center for Constitution Governance, is already here to talk about what is transpiring within the NRM party, undecidedness over the speakership race. We shall also talk about the Museveni's disingenuity on Umeme